Welcome once again to this program. Today, we will be doing the line of Act 3, Scene 2. Act 3, as has been reminded before, is the act of climax in the play. In Act 3, Scene 1, we were present immediately after the coronation of Macbeth and saw the manner in which he was able to manipulate and motivate murderers to be able to kill Duncan. You will also recall that in that process, he had dismissed the court, and significantly, I had drawn your attention to the fact that Lady Macbeth was dismissed with the rest of the court as well. This scene is an intimate scene between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And it is a very human scene, for we watch the way in which these two persons, so closely attached to each other, so dependent on each other, are now drifting away from each other. It was Coleridge who said, partnership in guilt leads to separation. And this is what is applied from this scene onwards. Recall, it was Lady Macbeth who had laid the plan for the murder of Duncan. It was Lady Macbeth who had motivated her husband, shamed him at times into the murder of Duncan. She had picked upon his weaknesses, his masculinity, and what was expected of him to get him to do the deed, even while she confessed her own femininity and inability to do the task herself. Here, Macbeth has laid out the plan for the murder of Banquo. There has been no consultation with Lady Macbeth. It seems as if he now no longer needs her. Not only does he not consult Lady Macbeth, but he in this scene actively misleads her when she asks him very directly as to what was going to happen to Banquo. Lady Macbeth gives him many pointers, many leaders, many opportunities to be able to share with her what his plans are. Perhaps she already knows that there are plans afoot for Banquo, but he does not share it with her and instead misleads her. What we notice in the scene is the manner in which both of them are filled with immediate regret following the coronation. We will hear how Macbeth will echo the words of Lady Macbeth, echo the words both of this scene as well as remind her of the words that she had used for him before the murder of Duncan. It seems as if he is able to take over her words and make them his own and quote them back to her as if he is giving her original advice. The scene begins on a rather quiet note. Lady Macbeth is in a chamber by herself. She is ruminating on the course of the day and feels that it is perhaps necessary to speak to Macbeth at this time. And she says to a servant who is standing by, is Banquo gone from court? And we know that he had gone from court. Ay, madam, but returns again tonight. And so she instructs, say to the king, I would attend his leisure for a few words. Madam, I will. And the servant exits. With the exit of the servant, Lady Macbeth has an opportunity to present a brief soliloquy, which of course encapsulates all the thoughts which are in her mind, and to share with us the manner in which, if I may say so, victory has turned to ashes. She says, Naught's had. We have achieved nothing. All's spent. We have lost and expended everything. Strange and rather sad words coming from a couple, for we will see Macbeth will say the same thing, coming from a couple who had felt that the coronation, that kingship, was the absolute zenith of their achievement. Instead, we have achieved nothing, we have lost everything. She goes on, where our desire is got without content. She admits, our desire is got. We have achieved what we wanted. What we wanted was the kingship of Scotland. Our desire is got. But without content. But we are not satisfied. We are not happy. As Macbeth will tell us later, it's not happiness or unhappiness that he refers to, but insecurity. He says that we had hoped that all this would lead to much happiness, much prestige, much joy. But our desire is now got, but without content. And here is the regret coming up. This safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. It is perhaps safer. Again, notice the theme of security and insecurity. It is not better, it is not happier, but it is safer to be that which we were and which we now have destroyed. What have we destroyed? Besides our peace of mind, we have lost the happiness that went with those earlier titles. Thane of Glamis, Thane of Cawdor. It would have been better for us to turn back the clock and be Thane of Glamis and Thane of Cawdor than by destroying the past and now living in what she calls doubtful joy. And so I'll read that last line where she says, then by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. Having destroyed the security, the joy, the comfort, and the privilege of the past, regrettably, it has not been replaced by any ecstasy or joy. And what others perceive the joy to be is only a doubtful joy. It is insecure. It is unsure. We therefore have made entry into the mind of Lady Macbeth sad lines expressing regret. But again, to her credit, when Macbeth enters, she once again bounces back to that tremendous support which has always been guaranteed by her in the case of her husband. And as he enters, she greets him, and it's all as if everything is all right. How now, my lord? Why do you keep alone? Of sorriest fancies your companion's making. And she herself admits, why are we parted? Why do you stay by yourself? Why do you keep alone? And keep alone in the company of what she says are sorriest fancies, sad thoughts, seeming to be always depressed, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with those they think on. And it is the old Lady Macbeth, a woman who was always completely literal, always looked at life literally, that there was no way in which you could give a sensitive interpretation. What is her solution? That the thoughts which you are now filling yourself with are thoughts which should indeed have died with the people that they are concerned with or the people they refer to. Let's explain that fully. Your thoughts seem to be related to Duncan, his death, the murder, and all the things that have accompanied it. Her literal explanation is that Duncan is dead, and therefore all thoughts related to Duncan should have died with him as well. Unfortunately, though she provides this kind of advice to him, we have already seen through the first 4 lines that she uttered that she too is in a state of similar depression, and perhaps for the same reasons as well. Her solution, as always, is get back to the present, live in reality. Things without all remedy must be without regard. What's done is done. If you don't have a solution for something, she says, things without all remedy, you should not consider it at all. Forget about it. It should be without regard. For what's done is done. It's history. It's over. It's finished. You might recall how even after the murder, when Macbeth was almost at the verge of hysteria, she had once again very literally and very rationally said, wash your hands. A little water clears us of this deed. How easy is it then? But she is beginning to learn that while water can wash away blood, water may not be able to wash away the guilt that they face at this time. Macbeth. It seems as if he is looking for some kind of support. And Macbeth, in an anguished tone, says, we have scotched the snake, not killed it. The snake, again a common reference throughout the play. The danger we have only injured. We have only scotched. The danger has not been eliminated. And while we have only scotched the snake, not killed it, he says, I am certain that she'll close and be herself. She will heal, the snake will heal, the danger will recover, the danger will come back to its former level, and we will always be afraid of what the outcome of that danger is likely to be. Macbeth, in effect, is saying that by gaining the crown, we have only been able to achieve a certain degree of success. There is the possibility that forces working against us may rally together, may be able to get as much collective power as possible, while we will always remain in danger of the former strength of those forces. The entire metaphor, of course, taken from a snake, which once injured is believed to become far more revengeful and seek out revenge from the one who injured or attacked it. And he goes on in a broader context to say, but let the frame of things disjoint and both worlds suffer. Rather late in the day, he is learning that if you disturb the equilibrium, if you disturb human equanimity, if the frame of things are disjointed, both worlds suffer. And the both worlds here are a reference to the world of day and the world of night. He goes on. During the day, we will conduct all the activities associated with day in fear. And during the night, we will conduct the chief activity of night, which is the benefit of sleep, that will be disturbed by nightmares that shake us every time we try to sleep. We will now read the lines. We will eat our meal in fear, not to be taken literally, but eating our meal is definitely an activity of the day. And we will sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. During the night, we will not get a good night's sleep. We will not get a good night's rest. For our sleep will be constantly disturbed by terrible nightmares, provoked, no doubt, by guilt for what we have done. And here come the lines of regret that echo what Lady Macbeth had said. You will recall she had said, not sad, all spent. He says, better be with the dead, whom we, to gain our peace, have sent to peace. Perhaps it would be better to be with the dead, that is, to be in the condition of Duncan, whom we, and we use a pun over here on the word peace, which here is used in two different meanings. It is better to be with the dead whom we to gain our peace in order to achieve what we thought would be our happiness. We sent to peace. We sent Duncan to rest in peace. Duncan to die. Than on the torture of the mind to dwell in restless ecstasy. Again, repeating what Lady Macbeth had said, doubtful joy. Doubtful joy. And even before we study that line again, a reminder of the manner in which the two of them reflect each other's minds, but despite being on the same page and having the same thoughts in mind, they cannot bring themselves to confess to each other or to share with each other the innermost secrets that now are motivating them. And to read that line again, it is better than the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. Presumably joy, presumably ecstasy, but a restless ecstasy, a doubtful, unfulfilled, not satisfying joy for us. And he goes on to lament the death of Duncan and says, Duncan's in his grave. And that we know. After life's fitful fever, he sleeps. Very gentle line. After all the disturbances of life almost like a fever that does not allow us to sleep, that constantly plagues us with disturbance. Now he rests in peace. Whatever Duncan could be afraid of as the ruler of Scotland has now achieved, as it were, its ultimate goal, which is his death. A king is finally afraid of death, is afraid of being moved from power. He says, now treason has done its worst. There can be nothing more devastating than the assassination of the king. Well, now that has happened. As a result, all the other fears that a king might have seem petty, seem insignificant, seem absolutely worthless before this huge act. Nor steel, nor poison, malice domestic, foreign levy, nothing can touch him further. He presents 4 different dangers that typically a king would face. Steel, weapons, armors, and being assassinated and killed, as Duncan indeed was. Poison, which was a rather common way by which rulers would be killed in times gone by. Malice domestic, domestic quarrels, civil war within the state, to have movements of secession. For example, what the people of the Hebrides had done under the leadership of MacDonald in Act 1. Foreign levy, foreign aggression. For example, the attack by Swino, the King of Norway. All these 4 elements put together suggest the pain that a king would face and the dangers that he would have to overcome. But now, with the assassination, Duncan is beyond this. They say, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. But now, Duncan no longer has to wear the crown and is resting in peace. Nothing can touch him further. Lady Macbeth, listening to this anguish, for she knows her husband so well, and she knows that he's expressing deep pain, tries to be gentle with him and says, "Come on, gentle my lord, flake over your rugged looks. They are words of encouragement. Gentle my lord, be cool about it, calm down, smoothen out the roughness even of your appearance." For the torture of the mind that he had talked about is also reflected in his overall personality, which she can recognize. Fleek over, smoothen your rugged looks, your disturbed appearance. Be bright and jovial among your guests tonight. And she suggests, although it seems unlikely that it will happen, tonight is a banquet. Tonight, be bright, be jovial, be happy among your guests tonight. For tonight we celebrate the coronation, we celebrate the acme of your power. And Macbeth says, "So shall I, love, and so I pray be you." Yes, yes, you are right. I shall be bright and jovial, and I suggest that you do the same. And now mark the next line. Let your remembrance apply to Banquo. Present him eminence, both with eye and tongue. And it is here that we see the departure of trust. He has already given instructions for the murder of Banquo. And he now misleads Lady Macbeth, advising her to ensure that special hospitality be applied, be offered to Banquo. Present him eminence. Give him importance, both with eye and tongue, both through your words and through your manner. And as soon as we hear that phrase, eye and tongue, we are reminded that this advice, in fact, had first been given to Macbeth by Lady Macbeth when she had told him how to put on a pretense in public to, if I may quote, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Having learnt this from Lady Macbeth, is it not ironical that the same words should be used in advice to her, who was the originator of that thought? Present him eminence both with eye and tongue. And why? For we are unsafe the while, that we must lave our honors in these flattering streams, and make our faces wizards to our hearts, disguising what they are. We are insecure, he says. And because we are insecure, the only way in which we can gather trust from Banquo is through a process of flattery. We will therefore have to live, we'll have to pour, we will have to wash so many honors upon him in a flattering stream. A metaphor taken from the pouring of water. We will wash and present and pour upon him so many honors in a flattering stream, for we must make our faces wizards to our hearts. Again, what earlier Lady Macbeth had advised him, to look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Our faces must be like wizards, like masks, to what is in our hearts and what is in our minds. Externally, we must not in any case reveal what is in our hearts and minds. Instead, we must disguise what we are. It seems as if regret and horror and anguish and pain are mounting on Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth, that dutiful, loving wife, simply advises him, you must stop it. Don't go ahead with this. You must believe me. And as she reaches out to him in tenderness, Macbeth utters one of the most sad lines, painful lines of the play in describing himself. When he says, oh, full of scorpions is my mind. Now imagine the image of one scorpion, okay, frightening, creating panic, potential danger, a killer sting, culturally, something which is always seen as negative. And he says that my mind is not filled with one scorpion, but with a nest of scorpions. That's the kind of anguish and pain that I am going through. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Thou knowest that Banquo and his fleance lives. And in that moment of weakness, he blurts out what is actually in his mind and says that my greatest fear at the moment, my chiefest cause for insecurity, is that Banquo and Fleance are still alive. Does it not seem that there is the possibility that he might tell her of his plan? And Lady Macbeth hears that line carefully, and she tentatively moves much closer to him in thought and words, providing him with an opening by suggesting through a euphemism that, look, they can also be killed. She says, and look at this very pleasant way of saying something as harsh as murder. She says, but in them, in their lives, nature's copy is not eternal. The old Lady Macbeth. Yes, they are alive, but life is not forever. In them, nature's copy, for indeed, everyone who is born is a copy of a certain blueprint of nature, but that copy is not eternal. It is not eternal. It can and will come to an end. And so, even though the word murder is not used, the suggestion is powerfully presented that they may not live forever. Macbeth, however, controls himself. And rather than sharing with Lady Macbeth the plan that we in the audience were privy to when we saw his meeting with the murderers in the previous scene, he says, there's comfort. Yes, yes, I suppose you are right. Yes, that is something which gives us solace. They are assailable. Yes, indeed. They can be attacked. They can be put down. The one opportunity that he had of telling Lady Macbeth, assisted by Lady Macbeth suggesting to him that this murder could be committed, he does not make use of the opportunity and instead sidetracks and changes the topic, saying, then be thou jocund. Well, you be cheerful, you be happy. And goes on to suggest, ere the bat had flown his cloistered flight, ere to black Hecate summons the shard-born beetle with his drowsy hums had wrung night's yawning peal. And now mark the line, there shall be done a deed of dreadful. We start with that last line. Before tonight, the only suggestion that he makes to her, not speaking to her directly about it, but providing some assurance that before tonight, there shall be done, there shall be accomplished what he calls a deed of dreadful note, an action that will be terrifying, troublesome, bad. Very simply, he is suggesting that before night falls, there is likely to be an action which will be terrifying. But look at the way in which he describes the onset of night. Ere the bat hath flown his cloistered flight. A bat is a mammal of the night. It flies and hunts only by night. Before the bat begins its cloistered, hidden, in darkness, before the bat begins his cloistered flight, before the beetle, he calls it the shard-born beetle, the hard-backed beetle, again a creature of the night, before the beetle begins to buzz, before the beetle with his drowsy hums, with his buzzing, announces the arrival of the night, which it seems is in answer to Hecate's call, Hecate's summons. Hecate, as we have already discussed, is the queen or the goddess of the witches. Therefore, every element of darkness and night would be associated with her, and indeed worshippers of her. And he says even before the bat flies tonight, even before the beetle begins to buzz, begins a buzz which seems to induce sleep, begins a buzz to induce sleep in response to Hecate's call. Sounds complicated. Very simply, before night falls, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note. And at this point, mark the line. We have been shadowboxing. We have not been stating things clearly and directly. We have been using euphemisms and suggestions. It's not the way a husband and wife who are close with each other, as Macbeth and Lady Macbeth had been. It's not the way in which they conduct themselves. But now, all caution is thrown to the winds, and Lady Macbeth comes out with it directly. What is to be done? What are you going to do? What is to be done? There can be no more direct question than this. And if Macbeth trusted her, perhaps he would have shared the information with her as well. But he says, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest, just till thou applaud the thee. Nothing doing. I can't bring myself to share this enterprise with her. So he passes it off by saying, be innocent of the knowledge. It's nothing for you to know. And be innocent of the knowledge until you applaud the deed, because indeed, before tonight, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note. That I am absolutely certain of. There shall be done a deed of dreadful note, but what it is, I am not sharing with you just now. I will give you the surprise of being able to applaud what is being done. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. The word Chuck is an old-fashioned term of endearment, like you would say beloved or darling or sweetheart. Okay? Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. And Macbeth, once again a pall of gloom descends upon him. Once again darkness descends over his mind. Once again the theme of darkness which permeates the play is once again expressed. And Macbeth seems to address the night as it approaches. Let's read. Come, sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale. Passionate words. I appeal to the darkness to come quickly. Come, sealing night, that seals the eyes, that stitches up the eyes. Scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day. Blindfold the day. Place a scarf around the eyes of day, so that this pitiful action may not be seen. And along with that, while the eyes of day are blindfolded, At the same time, I must ensure that with a bloody and invisible hand, a hand of murder by conspiracy, cancel and tear to pieces the bond that keeps me pale, the life of Banquo and his son. Notice the metaphor. A bond is a legal document. As long as that legal document is in existence, you are bound by it. I wish, he says, that that bond which disturbs and frightens me, here the bond referring to the life of Banquo and his son Fleance, a bond of life which frightens him because Banquo is one who is to be feared. But I wish that that bond can now not just be cancelled with a writing implement, but also thereafter torn to pieces so that there is no evidence that this bond of fear ever existed in the first place. Light taken. A strange phrase, for light is associated with luminosity. Thickness is associated more with viscosity. Here, the elements combine. Light thickens, it turns dark. And the crow makes wing to the rooky wood. The crow, once again, a bird that is black, goes back to the woods, the forests where the rooks have built their nests. Rooks are also ways of describing a crow. Makes wing to the rooky wood. Nice line. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, while night's black agents to their praise do rouse. All the lovely things associated with day, associated with the goodness of day, now go to rest. For example, flowers that follow the course and direction of the sun will close their petals and, as it were, sleep at night. The good things of day begin to droop and drowse and sleep, and as soon as night begins, it seems as if the time for evil has now begun. Night's black agents to their praise do rouse. The creatures of the night, those who are going to prey upon other creatures, use night as the disguise, as the ideal atmosphere to conduct these destructive tasks. And Lady Macbeth is probably just sitting and looking at him with awe and perhaps a great deal of pity because of his suffering. And he looks at her and he recognizes the strangeness in the appearance and says, "Thou marvelest at my words. You seem to be surprised by what I say. But hold thee still, take control, and definitely learn this next line by heart. for it shows us a major change in the development of Macbeth from that weak, sensitive human being into an outright killer. This was the same man who had said, "Present fears are less than horrible imaginings." And he now says, "Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill." If you have embarked on a career of crime and criminality, he says, there is no turning back. The only thing that you can do is to wade deeper in blood. Things bad begun. If the start was wrong, the only way by which relative success may be achieved is if you continue along the lines of ill. So prithee, go with me. And the scene ends, of course, with that couplet, "Till and ill," and Lady Macbeth is told, "Let us move together." And the scene comes to an end at that. We have had the opportunity of being able to enter into the inner recesses of the minds of both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Their minds do indeed reflect each other, but to close with that famous observation, partnership in guilt leads to separation.